Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be briefly discussing the film The Pianist. Now, my reasoning behind putting this film in more of the underrated category is although I know that it did make a lot of money and it still received some Academy Awards, I believe at least one by Adrien Brody as Best Actor, I still think that a lot of the time people don't really talk about this film all that much. Usually when people associate Holocaust films or films that are sort of discussing Jewish history, they often pick out Schindler's List or they'll pick out Fiddler on the Roof or something like that. But I find this one in particular to be interesting because it focuses in on the times of World War II, but sort of in a different way than I think Schindler's List did, and in a way that I feel is more personal, so we get a real sense of what the time was like, and I find it to be rather interesting and insightful to what was going on during the time period. So basically, The Pianist revolves around a pianist, and this pianist is named, I will really want to get this name right, but I apologize if I don't, Władysław Sipspilman. And he's played by Adrien Brody. And basically, this sort of story revolves around him and sort of the process that he went through the entire sort of time period from sort of leading up to the Second World War and then a little bit afterwards. There's also it's also supposed to be based upon a book, and this person is actually supposed to be an actual person, like the character that I mentioned was an actual person who did go through these things. So really they were trying to make this as realistic as they possibly could, and I think they were really trying to go for what the book was trying to say. At least I'm sure there's probably some differences in there, but I feel like that they were really trying to make it as true and authentic to the source material, especially considering that it's about an actual person that lived through it. So again, there's that aspect to this film, and basically this character Władysław, he is a normal Jewish man who likes to play the piano, and he plays it really well. And you'll see this in the way beginning, how he really enjoys the comfort that the piano gives him. And this is sort of leads up into the way beginning of the Nazis taking over Poland, because this is set in Poland. And basically when they take over, they sort of start discriminating the Jews early on, and then you'll see at one point how Adrien's character and everybody else has to wear like the Jewish star, and then you'll see how the Nazis start putting them into ghettos a little while later. But really what gets the plot started is sort of when he and his family are separated. You'll see at one point how they're going to be sent off to the camps, concentration camps. But what ends up happening is that Adrien's character manages not to get on the train, and so his whole family basically gets sent off to the camps, and he's the only one left out. And from there it kind of starts off his journey, sort of going through this war zone, which is basically where he's in. He's pretty much in a war zone for the most part, and he is trying to survive in a similar way as the people who were put into concentration camps were trying to survive. So you really do see these kinds of harsh conditions And at times this film can be rather graphic and can be fairly brutal. But I don't think it's. But I think this film was trying to be as authentic as it could, and it really was a cruel time period. So they show it, I think, with a good amount of realism, and they do really make the main character likable, and you feel a lot of sympathy for him, especially since he has to go through all of these different paths in order to survive. And it's interesting because I've never seen a Holocaust movie. I mean, I've heard of ones like It's a Beautiful Life and then Schindler's List, and they focus more in on the camps and sort of the conditions in the ghetto, leading up to people being sent off to the concentration camps. But they never really talk about somebody actually going through sort of this kind of a struggle, in that he's pretty much lost his entire family. He's pretty much completely isolated from anybody, and he just needs to somehow get through these horrible circumstances that you'll kind of see throughout the film. So really, his character comes off very well, and Adrien Brody plays him really well, I think, and you really do get a sense of his struggle and what he has to go through, and you sort of get a sense of what the time period was like and what circumstances end up leading him to where he ends up going. So that's really basically a general summary sort of the plot, as well as Adrien Brody, who's really the main focus of this film. There are not a lot of other characters. I mean, there are, but we just meet them in brief passing. We do get a sense, though, in the beginning a little bit of his family and how they have this really tight bond, but then how that bond is sort of broken towards the beginning when they're sent away. So you sort of see that within the film. There's also a point where there's actually I believe he's I don't know if he's considered SS, but technically he's a Nazi. And his name is Captain Wilhelm Hosenfeld, and I'm trying to pronounce it as German as I possibly can. And he's played by Thomas Kretschmann. And basically the way it goes about this particular with the way the film takes this particular character or presents this particular character is through a different lens than usually we see in Holocaust films. Oftentimes you will see them as you'll see the Nazis obviously as fairly evil people, like really. If you watch Schindler's List, you'll know what I'm talking about with the guy. Oh, I really forget his name, but he's played by I can't remember. The name's on the tip of my tongue, but for some reason I just can't. I know the face, just don't know the name. But basically he's portrayed as a fairly cruel, manipulative jerk. And this movie does an interesting thing in that the Nazi guy actually sort of helps this Adrien Brody's character. He doesn't really necessarily do all that much, but he still does enough to the point where he doesn't come off as a complete and utter evil devil spawn. Like, there's one point, like right when they meet, where the captain asks him if he wouldn't mind playing for him a song, and basically Adrien Brody like just sits down on his piano and he plays a song, and the captain obviously knows that he's a Jewish person in hiding, and I think at one point he does give him food too. So there is this sense of, I don't want to say like friendship, but sort of companionship where he kind of sort of sympathizes with Adrian's character, and he sort of doesn't come off as a rather evil killing machine. So it's a really different approach to something like in Schindler's List that we saw, where this guy is just pure, just pure evil and going around and shooting people. And but this guy, I don't even think you see him kill anybody in this film, and I don't know if this is fairly accurate to the way the book portrays it, or the way that this man saw this particular person or came in contact with this particular person. But it does seem like that for the most part they don't portray this character as something that we've seen. So that's why I find this film to be rather interesting, in that it doesn't take that traditional approach that we've seen in other films like Schindler's List. So this is that I find to be refreshing, and and I think it handles the atmosphere really well, especially with sort of the destruction that goes on throughout time, as you see like all the buildings getting destroyed, everything just becoming rubble towards the end. So you really do get a sense of atmosphere, and I think the film did a really good job of emphasizing that point. And I really felt like that they did handle the characters well, and that they did try to make things seem as realistic as they possibly could. I'm sure there's probably historical inaccuracies here and there, but I think they were trying to go for a sense of realism, and you do feel for Adrien Brody's character. You do feel for what he's going through. You do see the side of the captain, and how he's not all that Adrien Brody initially expects, because I think initially Adrien Brody knew somebody was there, and he was trying to hide from him, but he sort of comes out, and the guy kind of just goes, I'm not gonna kill you. So he kind of, in a sense, sort of, these two characters who are totally on from a different perspective just kind of come together, and just through that one moment of him playing the music, I think just speaks volumes, and there's not even a word uttered. You just get the sense of the captain absorbing what the music, how the music makes him feel, and you really do get a real sense of powerful emotions, and it's entertaining, and it's informative at the same time. And that's why I think this film works so well, is it can both be entertaining, but also open people's eyes as to how things were during this time period. So I think it's a really good film. I think I personally, this is more coming from a personal opinion, I actually like this film better than Schindler's List. Even though I do consider Schindler's List to be a classic, because everybody just likes to put it on that pedestal. Even though I consider that to be a classic, I consider this one to be overrated or underrated. But at the same time, I feel like the way they handled things was, I think, a little bit more, I think, interesting for me. And I think they just approached it from a different level, and the fact that they were actually using somebody who actually went through it, I think that really opens the door to the way people show these things in film. So I thought this was a really well done piece. I really do feel like it is a really good film, and people should, I think, pay more attention to it, even though I feel like people really don't, and they'll just say, oh, I know Schindler's List. Pianist? Oh, I don't remember. Oh, it was that one film, right? And so it doesn't seem like to me that a lot of people really talk about this film or like to reference it at all. It seems like that they would rather just leave it as for what it is. But to me, I feel like people should pay more attention to it. I think it is one of those Holocaust films that's really done right and done in a way that really shows you what people were going through during the time. And yeah, I think overall everything was just set up so well. So I think that's really all I can say. But if there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. But I think that's really all I can say about this film. Thank you so much for watching, and take care, everybody.